Hello, everyone. My name is Martin Hagay. I'm a professor at the Department of Psychology at the University of Montreal. Thanks for having me today. What I will be talking about is a tool to predict the future cognitive deterioration in patients who are assessed for dementia. Typically, when we do a cognitive assessment, the aim is to determine the level of cognitive functioning of the patient at the time of the test. Um, and but by doing so, we actually gather a lot of data, and we ask the question here whether this data that we gather can be used to anticipate the future cognitive function of a patient. This purpose may not be relevant for some types of cognitive deteriorations, but in the context of dementia, this may be very precious help because it can help everyone involved in the caregiving of for the patient to prepare for the upcoming cognitive degradation and make the appropriate plans and organizations, prevent various incidents as well. And this is that would be a much better situation than dealing with the with an emergency that is unexpected and that may cause a lot of difficulties. So to assess whether we are able to predict future cognitive function, what we did was to gather a large database of anonymized data from 729 patients who had received the cognitive screening test Cognistat at least twice. And from them, we retained 129 patients who were aged 50 years or more, 50 years old or more, and who were assessed for dementia screening, and where we had a delay of at least 6 months between the initial and final test administrations, so that we have a reasonable time window within which if everything were to work out, we would have a possibility of making a prediction about future cognitive function. One particular thing that I did to really make sure that our prediction model was fed data that was clinically relevant was to recode all the performance data from Cognistat in terms of an impairment severity score. So I will explain how this coding functioned. So just to begin with, these two variables here, the global impairment severity and number of subtests below norms, were the data that we wanted to be able to predict, given information on the initial administration of Cognistat. So our goal here was to predict these variables at T2, that is the second time Cognistat was administered, based on data gathered on the initial evaluation. So I mentioned just before that the performance scores in the various subtests were converted into an impairment severity score. So in cases where the performance of the patient on a given subtest was within the normal norms, the normal levels of performance according to published norms, then we scored 0. So that would be 0 impairment. But if the patient performed below the normal cutoff score, then the proportion of the we made a proportion of the by how much the patient is below the cutoff over the total range of scores possible for a given subtest. And these possible scores range, the range varies across subtests. So this is a reason for making a proportion instead of just the exact number of points below the norm. And so we made this impairment severity score for each subtest, and the global impairment severity score, which is what we, one piece of data we attempted to predict for T2 assessment, is simply the sum across the 10 subtests of Cogstat in terms of the impairment scores on these subtests. And the other score we attempted to predict because, well, we didn't know to begin with if, you know, what would function and if actually anything would function in terms of our ability to predict for future cognitive function. So there's this other variable we attempted to predict, which is the number of subtests below norms. So it's just the same principle as the impairment score. So, but instead of just quantifying it, we just scored 0 if the subtest scored within the norms and 1 if not. Here are the predictor variables that we gathered from the initial administration of Cogstat. And well, there are many. It's practically all the information that we could gather from this initial assessment. So we had demographics like age, sex, years of education. In Cogstat, we also gather information about factors that may affect the performance of the patient in terms of their cognitive scores. Like, for instance, if they suffer from known neurological problems, if they suffer from exhaustion, sleep deprivation, and so on. So these were scored 0 or 1, according to whether the patient showed the feature in question or not. We also summed the ones and zeros for these different factors. So just a number of factors by which the patient suffers and that may affect his performance. We also used the number of medications used by the patient. Here, this variable is the number of screen questions failed in the test. If you know Cogstat, you'll know what I mean. But if you don't, the thing is, the way Cogstat is built is that for each subtest, we start with a rather difficult question. And if this question is answered correctly by the patient, then we score the subtest with the maximal score possible. And if the screen question is failed, then we pass on to a metric section for the subtest where we assess in a greater graded manner the performance on the subtest in question. We had here the impairment severity scores also for each subtest, as I explained previously. The global impairment severity score, which I described, the number of subtests below norms, which I described also, and the MCI index, which is an index produced by the Cogstat at the end of testing for elderly patients, which reflects the level of risk of the patient suffering from mild cognitive impairment. So these all these variables taken from the initial administration of Cogstat served as the predictor variables for the T2 variables we wanted to predict. So the follow-up performance, which was at least 6 months in the future. The prediction model that we used is one which is based on a neural network, which is actually one of the main tools of artificial intelligence, which is based on the interaction of units within the model, which more or less simulate the function of individual neurons in biological neural networks. So the network we used was trained with a backpropagation algorithm, which had the particularity of separating the full data set into 3 components. One was what we call the training set, which is the actual set of data that was presented to the neural network for its training to develop its capacity of making predictions on the variables we wanted to predict. Another portion of the data is the validation set, which is a separate set of data which was used during training, not to train the neural network, but in fact to assess its capacity to generalize to this other set of data. And it is by measuring the progression of performance, prediction performance on the validation data that the network learning was measured, and that we eventually stopped the learning phase. And finally, there's a generalization data set, which was not presented at all during the learning phase, and which served to assess how well our prediction model can adapt or function for new patients who were not part of the learning set. So the task of the prediction model was to predict the global impairment severity score, or the number of subtests below norms for T2 administration, for individual patients, based on the scores we had in terms of the predictors at the initial administration of Cogstat. So I have here an overall description of the model used for the predictions, but I have here a figure which will make it easier. So the network was made of 3 hidden layers. The first one, which received the values of the input data, was made of 30 units. And then the following 2 hidden layers were made each of 15 units. And the last hidden layer connected to the output layer, which produced the value we wanted to predict. So in this network, it's a very basic neural network where all the connections just go forward to the right here. So there's no time delay within the model, there's no recursivity, and the activation of each individual unit in the model is determined by its own bias, which is like a baseline level of activation, and by the sum of the inputs which have been received from the previous layer, which are mediated by weights. So each connection to a unit is mediated by a weight, which is the amount of the value transmitted to it is actually gets to the target unit. An important aspect also of the network is the transmission function of a unit's activation to the to the units in the following layer. And an important feature of this transmission function is to be nonlinear. So this is the form of the function here, which is roughly the form of mild threshold. So there's actually a decision that is being made by each unit in the network. So here on the horizontal axis is the input, well, the level of activation of a unit. And on the y-axis, we have the output that is produced by that unit. So it ranges between -1 and +1. Okay, so here is the set of results we've obtained in attempting to predict the global impairment severity at T2 for the patients. So we get actually an excellent fit between the actual GIS at T2 and the predicted GIS. So horizontal axis here is the actual GIS for each of the patients at time the follow-up administration of Cognastat. And on the y-axis here is the predicted GIS. So as we see, we get an excellent fit to the data, and we explain 83% of the variance in the actual GIS scores at T2. So this is, well, a very high level of prediction performance. And nicely also, we get a very good fit to the data for the generalization sample also, which means that we can use this model to predict global impairment severity and apply it to new patients. And we know that it's going to work given this generalization capacity. As for our other model, which attempted to predict the number of subtests below norms, we also get a very good fit between the actual NBN at T2 for individual patients and that which is predicted. The fit is a bit lower than what we had with the GIS, but still it's an excellent model here. And we also get excellent generalization for the model. So when presented with data from patients who had not been part of the training of the model, we get actually a slightly better prediction performance of their scores than what we have for the entire sample. So to conclude, what we find here is that artificial intelligence models can be used to predict the future cognitive deterioration in patients who are assessed with Cognastat for dementia screening, which is in part thanks to the richness of the data that is gathered by the test. We find that the prediction fit is slightly better for the GIS than NBN. And while there's a bit of redundancy between the two measures, they remain separable. They are distinct variables. And currently we are assessing some optimal way to which we might integrate the two of them to make even better predictions than what we have now. Finally, we are proceeding to technology transfer so that the models I've presented can be integrated into Cognastat with what we expect will be the time intervals for which we'll make predictions into the future for the cognitive function of patients are 8, 12, and 18 months into the future. So that's it for me. Just one thing I wanted to mention about Cognastat, which might be relevant in the present context, is that the test is available in 11 different languages. So the predictions we've made here are based on a database of English administrations of the English version of the test, but it exists in many other different languages. So it can be widely applicable throughout the world. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Pia Nervalla Westman, and I'm a senior advisor on public health at the Nordic Welfare Center. Today, I'm here to share some insights on dementia prevention in the Nordics. But before I start, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak on this important topic at this session. First, some words about Nordic Welfare Center. Nordic Welfare Center is an institution under the Nordic Council of Ministers, and we have offices in Sweden and Finland with approximately 25 employees. We receive assignments from the Nordic Council of Ministers for Health and Social Affairs in the Nordics. What do we do? Well, our mission is to contribute to the development of welfare initiatives in the Nordic region by compiling and sharing knowledge on welfare issues and facilitating Nordic networks within health and social affairs. We have 6 focus areas within welfare areas: older adults, welfare technology, public health, disability issues, integration, and children and young people. And as you see, I have highlighted the 3 first because we are going to touch upon them during this session. About networks, Nordic Dementia Network is facilitated by the Nordic Welfare Center, and the main network involves Nordic experts from ministries, governmental agencies, and national competence services. We also include 3 sub-networks on especially vulnerable groups on dementia, and that is indigenous people, intellectual disability, and ethnic minorities. The network serves as a platform for sharing insights, experiences, materials, policies that serves to improve dementia care in the Nordics. Dementia from a public health perspective, well, then we're talking about dementia prevention. Dementia presents a major challenge to individuals and the society in the Nordics and in the whole world. It's a tragedy for individuals and for their relatives, but it's also a challenge to society who needs to provide good health care and support to persons with dementia. And one thing that is really challenging now is the staffing in healthcare. And with the prognosis that dementia prevalence will double up to 2050, we really need to do something since effective treatment is still lacking. So the good news is that there is a great prevention potential. Almost half of the dementia cases can be prevented. So health enhancing environmental factors and healthy lifestyle can contribute to more life years with good cognitive function and brain health. So how have the Nordic countries responded to the potential of dementia prevention? Well, let's see. the Nordic Welfare Center got an assignment from the Nordic Council of Ministers within Health and Social Affairs to map policies and practices on dementia prevention in the Nordics. And that resulted in this report, Dementia Prevention in the Nordics. You can find this report on our website, and you can download it for free and read more, because we will not have the time to touch upon all the recommendations and all the findings in this report during this short session. But I encourage you to download it and read it, because I think it can be inspirational also for your society and for your use. This report is descriptive, and it contains recommendations on how to proceed and improve dementia prevention. One important thing is to raise awareness in the public and to recognize dementia as a preventable disease, also in public health policy. The report was conducted 23 to 24 in close cooperation with the Norwegian National Centre for Aging and Health and the Nordic Welfare Center. And I would especially want to acknowledge our researcher in this project, Grete Kjellvik, at the Norwegian National Centre for Aging and Health, who has compiled all the information in the report. So let's start with the basics. What is the evidence for dementia prevention? Well, there has been really a lot going on in research during the past 15 years. And it started 2009 to 2012, where several studies show a falling incidence of dementia, which inspired the researchers to investigate which factors influence this decline or falling incidence. And then in 2015, there was a real breakthrough with the Finnish geriatric intervention study on cognitive decline and disability by Ngando et al. 2015. The study showed that lifestyle interventions can improve brain health and prevent dementia. So let's take a look at the finger model and study. The finger intervention showed that 5 interventions, like a multimodal intervention with healthy food, physical activity, mental stimulation, social activities, and monitoring of cardiovascular risk values gave cognitive benefits, and 20% lower risk for cardiovascular events, 30% lower risk for functional decline, 60% lower risk for chronic disease, better health-related quality of life, and reduced cost for healthcare. So there was also health economic benefits. And in this study, there were over 1,000 persons included, and it was in the older age band, 60 to 77 years of age, and it was a 2-year intervention study. There was a really low dropout rate in this study, which has also made the finger model now a popular model to actually use in real life. So this is something that is very visible in the Nordics, because, for instance, in Sweden, there are a lot of municipalities who are starting up to offer the finger model as a multimodal intervention for older adults. And in Finland, this has been done in a more comprehensive and strategic way, supported also by governmental programs. So this is something that has also become quite popular also in other parts of the world. So maybe you already are familiar with the finger model. Good research and good practical model to use. So let's also take a look at the Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention, Intervention and Care, who have published 3 reports on reviews on the risk factors and the prevention potential since 2017. So 2017, 2020, and 2024. And now the latest one was published in end of July and shows that almost half of the dementia cases in the world can be prevented, maybe by delaying the onset. And these 14 risk factors are all modifiable, because we also have risk factors that we can't do anything about, like age, gender, and bad genetics. But here you have all the classic risk factors here, also for other NCDs. And an individual can amend high LDL, diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, physical inactivity, tobacco use, high alcohol consumption, for instance. They are part of lifestyle, so they can be modified. Then we have things that are more on a policy level, like less education and air pollution. And for sure, for air pollution, there is a lot going on in technology and innovation with the green transition. So probably we will also see benefits for air pollution. So what can we do in practice? Well, prevention can be offered on a primary or secondary or tertiary level. So let's start with the primer and a part of the secondary prevention to see. We can do the lifestyle changes on an individual level, and then we can work on a population level with policy. Examples are regulation and legislation, and there we have been quite successful in the Nordics with regulation and legislation on tobacco and alcohol, for instance, that we are limiting the access to these. So it helps people to make healthier choices. Then there is also low threshold screening, health checkups that can be organized in society to find the risk factors, and also, of course, diabetes and obesity and so on. And then we can also plan our societies in their structure. So the society and communities are nudging people to do healthy choices. It can be like patterns for mobility and physical activity, for instance. So we have a lot of good digital tools nowadays. So it would be quite easy to raise awareness about dementia prevention, but because this has showed that awareness that dementia can be prevented is quite low in the public. So the first thing, raise awareness. Use awareness and learning campaigns, public health guidelines and information on the internet. Lifestyle counseling can be done also digitally. And this can be done on national or local level, different platforms, actors and sectors involved. And we have an example here of a newly launched digital learning platform from Sweden. The Fingers Brain Health Institute has been working together with Swedish Dementia Center to develop this learning platform. And It's still just in Swedish, but I think that it will appear in other languages in the future. So then we have this kind of very common, low-cost, easy accessible technologies that can be used. And for one risk factor as high blood pressure, that is one of the modifiable risk factors. You can make, or society or the community can make blood pressure monitoring available in public spaces. But you can also actually monitor your blood pressure in private spaces at home. And then you might need some support and learning for doing that. But the technology is there, and it's like low-cost technology. Then, of course, we know that wearable devices can support healthy lifestyle changes in the individual. Physical activity is one of the modifiable risk factors, and physical activity promotes health and brain health, and of course, cardiac health and so on. And devices can be used to track improvements in lifestyle. It differs between groups and individuals, how motivated you get by these devices. But there has been some research that show that for some people, this is really motivating because you go for the lifestyle change and for more physical activity. So this is also an opportunity. Okay, and then let's also look at the secondary and tertiary prevention. What happens when you already are in a high risk or that you actually got your dementia diagnosis? Is there anything we can do after that? Well, of course there is. We can promote brain health and keep up the cognitive functions. And that is also something that is gives hope and is a good thing to do. But let's look at just a couple of examples from the Nordics. Well, we have a lot of municipalities in Norway, but also some in Sweden, that promote mobility and physical activity with GPS alarm tracker to people with dementia. That supports mobility, safety for the person with dementia, but gives also relief for relatives, that you will know where your relative is when he or she is out walking or running or doing some activities. And even if he or she wouldn't find her way home or got lost, then you can see where this person is. So this has been shown to support mobility, safety, and physical activity, as I said. But a question is here also that I haven't still found anything in the literature, but I can also be ignorant about that. But I think also that this gives less risk for social isolation, and social isolation is one of the greatest risk factor in older age for dementia and for really bad cognitive health. So we should do everything that we can also for promoting social inclusion, and being able to take part in activities is really an important part of social inclusion. So you can read more about GPS trackers and dementia in the Nordics on the Nordic welfare site, because we are quite big on welfare technology in the Nordics. So we can learn more there. And then we have some examples from Aarhus municipality in Denmark, who uses WISE Floor, the interactive floor that combines physical activity, learning, and play. and also robot-assisted cognitive training, where the participants interact with the robot, Sille, through a tablet. All this is offered at the Dementia Corner, Demenshjørnet, in Aarhus municipality, that is a dementia-friendly municipality. And they also offer other health promotive activities. But I encourage you to go into their website and take a look, because it's really inspiring what they do. So, to conclude, it's never too early or nor too late in the life course for dementia prevention. It starts early in childhood with good education, and then you can amend and modify all these risk factors and have a good health promotive effect of these modifications. So this brings hope, even if our community is growing older and there is this prognosis for more dementia cases, but it can be promoted. And just to wrapping up, I would just like to tell you that we had a conference, a policy conference in Sweden on preventing dementia, evidence-based measures across the life course, where Her Majesty the Queen Silvia of Sweden inaugurated this conference, and we had the ministers speaking and other experts. And this edited version of the online conference is soon to be published on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. And also a conference report will be published on Nordic Welfare Centre's website. So please, if you want to learn more about dementia prevention in the Nordics, please take a look at the film and the Congress report, and of course, the report that I told you about in the beginning. Learn more about NVC's work broader on NordicWelfare.org, on Facebook, or at LinkedIn. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Pia, for the valuable insights. Your comprehensive overview of how Nordic countries are addressing dementia prevention through health-promoting lifestyle factors provide valuable lessons for global dementia care. Hello, Pia. Now let's take a look at the questions raised by our audience. The first question: are there any challenges of adopting technologies for dementia prevention in Nordic countries, and any further measures to overcome that?
Well, thank you, Pona. Thank you for this question, and also thank you for to the organizers that I was invited to speak at this session. Well, of course, there are challenges. We are quite big on welfare technology, technologies that support patients and can be used in healthcare in the Nordics, but there we also see some challenges in implementation. And when we speak about dementia prevention, I think the biggest challenge for now is that there is still quite low awareness that dementia can be prevented. But when we get there, that everyone is really on board, I think that this will enhance innovation, not only in welfare technology, but also well-being technology. And so I think that we need to overcome the threshold of awareness. That's the first thing to do. And that was why we got this assignment to compile what is really happening in the Nordics at this point. So I think that we will see more of supportive technologies in the future in this area.
Thank you for your insights. Let's look at the second question. There are also huge stigma about primary dementia prevention in Hong Kong. Do you have any examples to promote to young, old, or adults in enhancing awareness of dementia prevention?
Well, I think that it's a very good start if the stakeholders that actually are responsible for dementia care and for health checkups and the school systems and so on, that they come together and make some policies around this, because then that will dribble down also to the individual level. Because I think that people that get aware of this, or maybe have relatives with Alzheimer's disease and so on, some people might amend their lifestyle by themselves, but I think that a health promotive community and city is maybe the best thing, because then it will nudge people to make good choices, even if they are not aware that they make healthy choices. So I would like to address the stakeholders that have the power to actually make policies and also plan the cities and the communities, how they are structured. So I think that this also would diminish like this stigma, because when you promote a healthy lifestyle, you will prevent dementia, but you will also prevent like cardiac disease and diabetes and other NCDs. So I would say that start with a policy, start on that level.
Yeah, and also taking different stakeholders to take part in this promotion of the dementia prevention is very important. Yeah. All right, let's see the third questions. Any resources provided by the government in Nordic to work along with five-finger model to motivate startups or companies to innovate products and solutions for dementia elders, carers, or training tools for dementia patients?
Well, this is a bit of a tricky question because I think that on the policy level, there has been front runners in the Nordics, and that has been Finland and Iceland, who have on a high policy level from the government has decided that prevention is part of the dementia strategy. And Sweden is coming also in this case, because they are renewing their dementia strategy. So this will be a part probably of the renewed dementia strategy in Sweden. And I actually don't know if there is any like financial support to startups in this field, but I believe that if the government actually points out a clear route to dementia prevention, then the startups and the companies that see the opportunities will of course seize that opportunity. Again, I think that the policy is policies are really important in this case.
Thank you, Pia, for your sharing. That's all for the questions. Thanks for the exchange.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for the exchange on dementia prevention. Thank you.
Thank you and good luck.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ulrika Granér, and I am a specialist nurse in dementia care and elderly care in Sweden, in Scandinavia. And I want to say thank you for inviting me to this very interesting seminar. And I'm going to be presenting a short lecture on how we work with dementia prevention in a Swedish context. As I said, I'm a specialist nurse in dementia care, and I've been working as a nurse for almost 20 years in Sweden. I work with a non-profit foundation in Sweden. It's called Stiftelsen Silviahemmet. In this picture, you can actually see Her Majesty Queen Silvia of Sweden. She started this non-profit foundation, Silviahemmet, 28 years ago in 1996, with the initiative to raise knowledge about dementia and to raise the status of assistant nurses working in dementia care. The foundation was inaugurated on Valentine's Day in 1996, and we offer education to various professionals in care, but also to family members. And we have a daycare center for people with dementia. Since we are a foundation, we have statutes, and we have 3 main aims for the foundation in our statutes. It's spreading knowledge about dementia disease and dementia care. And we have our day center for people living with dementia, where we have a lot of young people in the age between 50 and 65 years old. And we promote research. So we engage in practical research. We don't have any researchers working for us, but we use the data from research in our daily work. Since 2022, we also have a nursing home for people living with dementia. I am here today to talk about dementia prevention, because we know today that dementia cannot yet be cured, although there's a lot of research working on finding that cure or vaccine. But research the past 10 to 20 years has shown that to a high extent, dementia can actually be prevented. And the last Lancet Commission report coming now in 2024 says that dementia can actually be prevented in up to 45% of the risk. And you can start at any age and still have a good chance of preventing or postponing the onset of cognitive decline or dementia. So this is really good news to us. But then, of course, to prevent dementia, we need to know what to work on. And in Sweden, we have another organization, a foundation called the Swedish Dementia Center, which is a sister organization to Silviahemmet, and they are tax funded. So they work for all of the Swedish society. They actually have right now an ongoing project to spread knowledge about dementia prevention. And it's supposed to be spread to care workers, but also to any citizen in Sweden. And therefore, they created an online school on dementia prevention, and it's called the Finger ABC, as you can see in this picture. So what's the Finger ABC about? Well, it's actually based on a big research project from the Finger Brain Health Institute in Sweden. And they have found out that if we use the 5 fingers to remember what to do to prevent dementia, we will have the best preventative effect. So the 5 fingers are healthy food, mental stimulation, checking your cardiovascular risk factors, engaging in physical activity and in social activities. And the lady and the man you can see in the picture here, they're actually a picture from the online education Finger ABC, where they talk about the 5 fingers of dementia prevention. So basically, one can say that preventing dementia is not about doing one single thing that will prevent or postpone the dementia onset. It is a combination of several lifestyle factors that we can actually work actively on to get the best dementia prevention. If we include all of these factors in daily life, dementia can be prevented even in people who have the genetic predisposition for Alzheimer's disease. And this is actually shown in the latest Lancet Commission report on dementia prevention. So I'm going to go through now with you each of the 5 fingers that we are working with in Sweden, and I will give you some examples of how we do that. So the first part is eating healthy food, and to know what to eat, we must know what is considered healthy food. And this is actually differing in any country, but it's about eating good unsaturated fats like vegetable oil-based fats and nuts, and to get a lot of fish, but not that much red meat coming from cows or chickens or pigs. And so if you would live in Spain, you would eat the sort of olive oil and the good vegetables coming from there. Or if you live in Hong Kong, the type of food that is considered healthy there. In Sweden, we call it the Nordic dietary recommendations, and they include what is actually grown and harvested in the local area. So it's a lot of fish, and we have the rapeseed oil instead of the olive oil because we can grow rapeseed here. We have a lot of good nuts with the good fat in those, a lot of root vegetables like carrots and beetroots, and green leaf vegetables like spinach, and also, of course, the kale like broccoli and so on. We, as you can see in these pictures, they're actually pictures from our day center where we engaged our guests in planning the weekly planning for meals every day. So for lunch, we have a lot of vegetables, as you can see in the pictures, but also fish. So we have the pink salmon, and we have the cod, which is very popular in Sweden. So we don't do the cooking and tell people what to eat. We actually engage our guests, and they want to give us some input on what they prefer to eat, but they're also very interested in eating healthy themselves. When it comes to technology, this is not very difficult. It's about finding good recipes and good recommendations. And you can also, if you want to track your nutrient intake every day, there are a lot of free apps for download that you can use where you have to put in everything you eat through the day. What we use a lot is that when we are out of ideas, we can use some free app on our smartphones where we can actually put in a request for recipes that are healthy and are based on these sort of nutrients. And we can also get the recipes read to us if we have lower reading skills. And there are also some free apps that actually work with making the recipes easier to read. So they don't have that much text. So they're adapted for people who have lower cognitive reading skills. And we have a lot of food stores that have their own apps recommending recipes. So it's all for free and it's available to anyone. Then the other part is engaging in physical activity. And in Sweden, for a very long time, we've already had a recommendation to prevent cardiovascular disease and diabetes of doing at least 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity activity per week. And moderate intensity means that you have a raise in pulse and breathing pace, but you don't get sweaty and you don't have to get changed. So we would say like going for a bike ride or a walk that is a bit faster than just the shopping walk. So moving around, but not getting too exhausted. If you want to do the sort of intense activity instead, you only have to do half of the time, so 75 to 150 minutes per week. And this has also been shown in the Lancet Commission report that any type of activity is good, and the more the better, and that you can actually start at any age. But of course, the longer you do it, so if you start already as a child and you keep doing it all of your life, you have a better prevention for cardiovascular disease, but then also for dementia. In Sweden, we preferably do activities outside, because then we also get the sensory stimulation of wind and sunlight and raindrops on our skin, and we get to get the fresh air, and maybe we do it together with a friend, like the ladies here who are running together. But any type of physical activity is good, so you should choose the one that you like. In our day center, since we have a lot of young guests, we do a lot of high intense activities. So right now, table tennis is very popular. We've also done running and heavy weightlifting in our gym. For physical activity, there are a lot of free download apps, and also apps you can buy to get you going, but also track your activity and your pulse and your breathing. And what we've used in Sweden is also that we use the GPS watches, so that people who have a worry that they might get lost if they walk in the city and they don't know how to get home, they can just press a button, and it's like a safety alarm that connects them to someone of their choice that can guide them home. So this gives people with a lowered cognitive function to actually be independent and keep getting outside to get their daily walks or runs or what they want to do. Then we have the third part, which is mental stimulation. And mental stimulation, it's not about memory training that we used to say, it's so much more. It's anything that activates the brain. So it can be reading a book or the newspaper, and it can be doing crosswords or Sudokus, but also keeping track with the news. So watching the news on TV or reading the newspaper, listening to the radio news, and so on. And in this is also included education. So what the Lancet report recommends is that everyone should have good education already from childhood, and the more years in school and the higher education level, the better the dementia prevention effect is. In our day center right now, jigsaw puzzles are very popular, and we do a lot of crosswords. Maybe the person can't do them themselves anymore because of their cognitive decline, but we can do them together, so we get the social stimulation as well. So if we read the questions and words together, we can still do it. So it's all about adapting the activity so that people can keep doing what they like, but it's based on their recent functional level. I have a favorite app for mental stimulation, and it's a free download Sudoku app where I do a daily Sudoku. There are crossword apps, and in Sweden we also have a free library service audio book library, so we can download audiobooks and listen to books, which is also reading, but in a different way. So if I have trouble reading because of poor eyesight or because of my cognitive decline, maybe I can still listen to a book and get mental stimulation. So yet again, there are a lot of easy, accessible apps that are free to everyone that we can use to get this mental stimulation in our daily life. Being social is also important in dementia prevention. This doesn't mean that everyone should join a choir or go to big parties every day. It's about being socially stimulated in the way that I prefer to be. Not everyone wants to socialize in big groups. Maybe I just want to sit and have a talk to one person at a time, and that's also a social stimulation. But it can be about dancing, which is also physical activity and mental stimulation at the same time. Maybe joining a choir, playing board games, which is very popular in Sweden. Maybe you are going to a book club, or you have dinner with friends and family, and so on. During the pandemic, the social activation for people, especially the ones older than 70 years old, had a real turn because of the isolation, and we couldn't meet as we did before. We saw a downshift in how socially stimulated people were. And this actually gave the effect of a worsening in cognitive decline. What we used in the nursing homes and for older people who had to stay at home was that we introduced video calls through Zoom or WhatsApp or FaceTime or whatever. And they could still have a social interaction without meeting someone face to face. And there is maybe a old thought that old people can't handle modern technical devices, but what was really shown during the pandemic was that even more than 90% of people who were 80 years or older, they had no problem in using smartphones or computers or iPads to interact. So it's very common in the older generation that we have now to be very good at using these kind of technical devices. What the Lancet Commission report shows is that, of course, social interaction is more effective if we can actually meet face to face. But if we don't have that opportunity for some reason, it's a good way to do it through video calls. So this is like the second best way to anything that can keep you socially active. We have to think about one thing here, and it's to adapt the social activity, because hearing loss and vision loss is very common in older people. So make sure that they have good vision and hearing aids so they can still interact. And this is actually one of the biggest risk factors for dementia, is that if you don't have the right aids to correct your hearing and vision loss, there is a bigger risk of getting dementia, or getting it earlier than you would have otherwise. Now, the last of the 5 fingers is checking your cardiovascular risk factors regularly. So it's about checking your blood pressure, your blood glucose levels, your weight, and your LDL cholesterol regularly. And this should be done already from age 40 and up, because when it comes to cardiovascular risk factors, research has shown that it's in the age between 40 and 60, so middle age, that if you have bad levels of blood pressure or any of these cardiovascular risk factors, you have a higher risk of dementia when you get old. And what we work with in Sweden is that telemedicine is coming on more and more. So the person themselves, they don't have to go to the doctor as often as they used to. They can check their data themselves, take their blood pressure and their weight, and they can just get it into their journal, and the doctor can check the journal from a distance through the computer, and the doctor can track these risk factors and get in touch with the patient if needed and work to prevent them. So this is coming more and more, but it's still just starting in Sweden. That was a short lecture on what we are doing right now in Sweden, but the main message is a lot of dementia risk can be prevented, and it's worth starting as early as possible, but you can also do it all through life and have a lower risk of getting dementia. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Ulrika. Thanks for elaborating more the 5-finger models with practical tips. I think it is also useful for adults like us to keep ourselves active and prevent dementia in long run. Now, let's go to the question raised by the audience. Thanks for sharing some practical tips for five-finger model. Can you share some examples of how your foundation align or even go beyond the model on dementia prevention? Eureka, please.
Well, since our foundation actually works with people who already have dementia, we're using the five-finger model to keep their cognitive level as long as possible, because it can be used for keeping function as well. So what we do is that we engaged our participants in dancing and gym classes, and we do everyday walks. And some people want to walk by themselves because they don't want to feel like they need support. So what we do then is that we can use some type of GPS alarms so that they can actually walk themselves, but they can feel confident knowing that if they would get lost, we can easily find them and they don't have to be fetched by police or search officers. We also use a GPS that includes a falling down sensor. So if the person doesn't have the cognitive ability to press an alarm to get help, there is actually a sensor in the GPS alarm that detects if there's a sudden movement downwards, and it sends an automatic alarm to the staff. And this has made it possible for some of our participants to go on their walks also when they're at home and they're not at day centers. So their family and themselves feel confident that if anything happens, they will get help quickly without having to remember how to call 911 or press an alarm button.
Thanks for the response. So the next question. Any encouraging real-life stories on the patients of your foundation who practice the five-finger model do have improvement in their dementia status?
This is kind of a tricky question, I would say, because we cannot prevent the brain damage from happening with the five-finger model. But what some of our guests have told us, and also their family, is that they feel a bit more alert and they are less tired when they come home again because of getting nutritious food and doing activities that enhances their blood circulation and so on. So I would say that it's a subjective experience of feeling better, but we cannot improve the cognitive function in a way that they don't have dementia anymore. But I mean, for quality of life, it doesn't matter if you are sick or not. It's the feeling of being sick or feeling well. So I would say that we have quite a few guests who really can sense that if they take care of their body and their mind and their social activities, they feel better and they have a higher quality of life. And that is worth so much.
Thank you. Okay, the next question. What kinds of training to caregivers you see that is the most critical at elderly homes to support elderly with dementia?
I would say that we have a great need, both in Sweden but also across the world, to stop seeing people as sick patients and shift our focus to the person-centered way of working so that the person is always at first hand. I am someone who has had a healthy life and I have life experience and work experience, and I am still a grown-up person and I should be treated as a grown-up person. Too many times we have seen that people are treated like children and they are sort of taken out of society, and that gives them a feeling of meaninglessness and that lowers their quality of life. So what we focus mostly on at the Sylvia Hammett Foundation is how to work person-centered and how to put the person first and the disease last, and to just understand that you can live with a severe grade of dementia, but still have a good life as long as you are treated as the whole you, from an existential and physical and psychological and social perspective. So the holistic person-centered care, that's the thing we should work on.
Thank you for sharing your in-depth experience in Sweden. So that's all for the questions. Thank you, Ulrika.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a good day or evening.